e aku nui, e aku rahi, tēnā koutou. E aku hoa mahi, ngā kaimahi o ngā whare pukapuka o te motu, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou. Ki ngā tangata whenua, tai nui, ngā kaitiaki o te kingitanga, kei te mihi, tēnā koutou. Ka mihi hoki ki te kaupapa o tēnei hui, wai ora, wai Māori, wai Kato. Ki te rō heringa o Aotearoa, koutou i whakariti tēnei hui, ka nui te mihi. Ko Bill Macnaught aho, te tumu whakahaere o te puna mātauranga o Aotearoa. Tēnā tātou katoa.
All right.
It's a great pleasure to be here in Hamilton. It's been an unforgettable conference, except for a few of us who stayed out drinking too late last night, and they probably have forgotten about last night's wonderful dinner. There is a serious point to this cartoon. It's a cartoon by Joshua Drummond, a local cartoonist whose work some of you may have seen at our stand. The National Library's stand at the conference here had an exhibition of some of the cartoons that are on display at the moment at National Library in Wellington. And I suppose it serves to illustrate the point that the work of the National Library is, of course, about collecting all sorts of material. But we've come up with a sentence that is intended to demonstrate that we are about more than collecting stuff. We collect, connect, and co-create knowledge to power New Zealand. That's what my team believe we do. The verbs are really important. The collect verb is the obvious thing that people think about us. The old perception of National Library is that we collect stuff, we keep it in a building in Wellington, locked away so nobody can get it. Lots of mistaken stereotypes about what the National Library is about. Increasingly, though, we are raising our game about connecting New Zealanders to all sorts of knowledge, and particularly moving into this space of helping New Zealanders to co-create their own knowledge. It has been a busy year since I last spoke to you. This is the refurbished National Library building in Wellington. And the last time I spoke to you, we were still fixing the roof on the building. Now we have a fabulous space, which is ideally suited to looking after the heritage collections and also to provide an inspiring space for people to connect and co-create new knowledge. The Prime Minister helped us to open the building on the 27th of November last year, and this is in playing with our award-winning Lifelines Touch table in the main foyer. He was impressed with the opening exhibition about big data, which was deliberately designed to reposition the National Library as being not only about the cultural heritage of New Zealand, but also about connecting people to the world's knowledge, bang up-to-date knowledge, ideas to inspire thinking, and bringing in knowledge from all over the world in the fields of science and technology. I had a trip to Beijing with my boss, she's the one in the middle, and we re-signed a 5-year arrangement of cooperation with the National Library of China. We have another 5-year arrangement of cooperation with the National Library of Singapore. And one of the things that I've found quite exciting in the last year is that they have both been attracted to engage with our Digital New Zealand technology platform, which we will probably be moving to an open source platform. That's our intention, so that we can share with the National Library of Singapore, in the first case, the same platform to surface content held by all sorts of institutions. And all of the ASEAN national libraries have also said that they want to become part of that project. So that's quite an exciting international cooperation that has begun this year. We've discovered new treasures. So this is an illustration of the Sumarun short story that was previously undiscovered, and Dr. Jerry Kimber, an expert in the field of Mansfield studies, discovered this in the collection of papers that we had acquired recently from the Middleton Murray collection. We have recently appointed a new Poet Laureate, Vincent O'Sullivan. This was just a couple of weeks ago down in Wellington. He is now proudly installed as the nation's new Poet Laureate. We've had a couple of exhibitions. The opening one, as I say, was about big data. The current exhibition is Tirohia Mai, about the role of women in the development of New Zealand over the years. We have celebrated the 3 millionth digitized page of Papers Past, our most popular website. The chap on the left of the picture is Sam Minchin, who's in charge of the digitisation programme, and that's the Timaru Herald that the minister is looking at. The minister's the one standing on the other side of me, Chris Tremaine. I should say it's worth noting that I've had the same minister for a whole year, but he's going next year. He's already announced that he will not be standing again in the general election next year, which I think is a pity, because he has been a very supportive, and still is, of course, a very supportive minister of the National Library. He loves the work that we do in the National Library. And of course, Papers Past has been an inspiration for our Booker Prize winner, or maybe Canada's Booker Prize winner, but whatever way you look at it, she has acknowledged that Papers Past has been a great source of material in writing the luminaries. And I like to think that perhaps someday the next generation will be inspired by the success of Eleanor Catton. Eleanor Catton's mum worked for the National Library, I should also mention. Since Nat was doing all the keep calm things, I was hoping he wasn't going to come up with this version of it, steal my thunder. We have been busy looking at service redesign ideas in a number of areas in the National Library. And one of the things that we are doing, talking about inspiring children, the work that we're doing in the service to schools has been under review for a long time. And we are just at the stage now where finally we've got the go-ahead to talk about how we redesign those services. And I would expect by the end of this calendar year, we'll be in a position to talk about how we structure ourselves to go forward, delivering a new generation of service to schools and young people. The reference at the bottom of that screen is to Service Transformation Result 10, and that's an important part of the government's ICT Strategy and Action Plan, which was published in June of this year. And some of you may have looked at it. I would strongly encourage you to have a really good look at it, because this is one of the main drivers of thinking across the Department of Internal Affairs, of which we are part. It also increasingly is setting out the direction for the whole of government, and indeed for the whole of the public sector in New Zealand. there is this thing called functional leadership. And the chief executive of the DIA has functional leadership across government for the development of ICT strategy. So, for example, from the strategy, we have very clear statements that services will be digital by default. And that's not except the National Library. So we have got some serious work to do at the National Library to think through what this means for us. And there's a job of work for me and my team to do to explain to colleagues why our business is not simply about transactions. It's not about transforming a transaction from a simple analog routine or face-to-face routine. I don't know if anybody in the audience has recently renewed your passport, but the process for renewing New Zealand passports online, I am repeatedly being told how easy it has become to renew passports online. Don't know if anybody in the audience has got any.
Yeah, I did it just earlier this year in June, and it was very easy. Yeah. Very easy.
So we are beginning to pick up that transactional transformation. But of course, the National Library is not simply about the transactions of books. In any shape or form, you would have to say that the National Library is about enriching the cultural life of the nation, and it's also about enriching the economic life of the nation. That's what our legislation says. And we don't do that through simple transactions. What's become very much reinforced through the conference is the importance of mobile, and the National Library has got a lot of work to do there to present our services in a way that makes it really easy to use in a mobile context. The digital shift Nat referred to, and that's become the dominant phrase in our thinking at the Department of Internal Affairs. There is a huge piece of work going on at the moment talking about the digital shift and how the National Library will look after we've made the digital shift. And I don't have the results of that to share with you, but if I'm invited back next year, I will be able to tell you what's come out of that. I would expect it to be quite significant in the impact it's going to have on National Library. And there's a particular development at the Department of Internal Affairs about identity verification. And you would have probably used this in renewing your passport, for example. But the Department of Internal Affairs has developed this to become the standard application for all government services where any citizen needs to verify the identity. It will be Real Me that is being used for identity verification purposes. And that potentially has got some benefits for us in the library. Looking at the road ahead, so over the next year, there are a number of pretty big events coming up for us. There will be the centenary of the outbreak of World War I, and standing next to me there is the British High Commissioner with the special representative of the Prime Minister from the United Kingdom, who was in Wellington recently talking to government colleagues about New Zealand's plans for commemorating World War I, and that's a huge piece of work. The Treaty of Waitangi is moving to the Wellington National Library building. Probably by the middle of next year, you would expect to be able to come and visit the treaty in its new location. All of this work is being led by my colleague, the Chief Archivist. The document on the right, of course, is the suffragist petition, not the Treaty of Waitangi. So there are a number of really important documents of nationhood that will be presented in a way that talks about the relationship between the state and the citizen since around the time of the treaty. In designing our services for the future, one of the things that we've been doing over the last few months at the National Library is talking to our own staff about a document that we produced in 2007. Many of you will remember the strategic directions for the National Library that were published in 2007. And the National Library made a lot of promises in that document that between 2007 and 2017, we would deliver on a whole raft of promises. And we've had 10 workshops with staff. So every member of staff has had the opportunity to contribute. And one of the questions that I've asked is how well staff think that we've met those promises since 2007. Where do we still have much work to do? And is there anything that's not in the list already that we need to be focusing on over the next 4 years, let's say? And not surprisingly, this illustration is this is the Cliff Whiting mural at the National Library building in Wellington. This I've used to symbolize Himea Māori, the fact that we have got a lot of work still to do around our work with and for Māori people, so that the National Library is seen as Te Puna Mātauranga o Aotearoa, truly a resource where Māori feel it's as much for them as it is for Pākehā. And I acknowledge the work that Chris Sike has done in strengthening the Alexander Turnbull Library's capability in this space. And I'm particularly delighted that we've got staff of the calibre of Paul Diamond, Ariana Tikau, and Lynette Terrell, who are all at the conference this year, making a terrific difference to our ability to deliver in this area. But repeatedly, staff were saying that we've got so much more to do in this space. We don't have the answers yet about what this is going to do. We're still at the stage of being clear about the big chunks of work that we want to focus on over the next few years. And this is most definitely one of those spaces. Similarly, work with Pacific Island libraries is an area that we feel we have neglected. We promised to do work in this space, and we have yet to deliver properly around that. This is an illustration from the Turnbull collections from the late 1990s. Speaking of collections, another major area of work is to have a good end-to-end examination of the collection strategy that we have at National Library to ensure that it is fit for purpose in an age of digital collecting, where that's becoming more and more important to us. We had a workshop yesterday here with our colleagues in LIANZA about e-book procurement. And I suppose one of the key questions in that space is how much libraries need to collect assets, or whether it's more about access to the documents. So the whole question around legal deposit and how we use our legal deposit collection is a conversation that I've been having with the Publishers Association of New Zealand. And as a for instance, when we're looking at our collection strategy, one of the things that I have floated with the Publishers Association is the possibility that since we are collecting digital files for legal deposit purposes, we have a statutory obligation to do that. It does seem a bit perverse that we can't share those digital files beyond the building in Molesworth Street in Wellington. And one obvious possibility is that we could make those files available across a wide area network, perhaps using the APNK network to make this legal deposit digital material available across the whole country. And that might set all sorts of alarm bells ringing, but if you work on the basis that we have the ability to share copies with 3 concurrent users in Wellington, just for argument's sake, if we were able to make 3 concurrent users allow 3 concurrent users across the whole of the country, how's that going to threaten the publisher's business livelihoods? And already there are encouraging signs that the publishers are indeed willing to have a new conversation about how we use our collections in a new way. Still early days, but I'm just sharing with you the way those conversations are going. We are going to revisit our access strategy. Again, talking to staff, it was very obvious that we've made good strides that staff are proud of in this space, but there is a very strong recognition that there's a lot more to do. I've already mentioned the mobile dimension to this, that we feel we have not yet got a strong offer in that space. Having said that, we've got some fantastic people working for us at National Library, particularly mention the Digital New Zealand team who have helped us to redevelop the website so far. And what you're seeing on the screen at the moment is just a screenshot from a new facility that we've developed. It's still at a beta stage, really, but it's a geo-searching facility, so you can now search our collections by typing in a keyword that you're interested in, but looking at the results based on a geography. You can see this for yourself. Some of you may have already been playing with it on the website, but it gives a much more, well, just a different dimension on searching the collections. And we developed this facility specifically in response to some of the conversations that we had with Maori customers as we were developing the new website as part of the new generation work that we've concluded now. So this is a piece of work that is ongoing in business as usual state now. And if you've not had a look at it, it certainly is worth a look. We are clear as staff that we need to be doing a lot of work around digital literacy, particularly digital literacy with young people. And we are tying in with the work that the Ministry of Education is doing in that space. So you have Minister Nikki Kay leading a very important piece of work for the ministry around this, and our staff in the Services to Schools team, the Literacy and Learning team, are fully engaged in making sure that that work acknowledges the contribution that libraries can play in developing digital literacy. I just like this photograph. But the point about this illustration is that we find ourselves having to explain to some colleagues that digital literacy actually will be strengthened if people have basic literacy. And that we know from colleagues in Australia, when they ran their National Year of Reading program, that I think it was something like 45% of the population in Australia was considered to be functionally illiterate. And if you're functionally illiterate, giving somebody a smartphone isn't really going to solve their problems and make them digitally literate. So this is another area of work that we're very clear about, reading engagement, and I'm delighted to say that there is a collaborative effort, and certainly involving colleagues from LIANZA, SLANZA, Te Raupu Whakaho, Association of Public Library Managers, Ministry of Culture and Heritage, booksellers, New Zealand Book Council, particularly active. And we had a Creating Readers hui in our Auckland Centre about a month or so ago. And there was a real energy in the room about the potential for collaboration. Everybody in the room was interested in having more New Zealanders reading more. Perhaps for slightly differing reasons, but we did have the Ministry of Education represented there as well. And I actually think that we are beginning to see a real synergy developing among the various agencies who are concerned to have more New Zealanders reading more. And I'm very clear in my own mind that it must begin with early years. And that may seem like stating the obvious, but I think there is so much more that New Zealand can do to support reading development in early years. And it's particularly important for me that public libraries and school libraries are encouraged to work together at community level, because there are still, sadly, some communities where there is not much dialogue between school library and public library. And of course, public libraries reach children at an age well before they go anywhere near their local school. And we know from the research that it's in those early years that it's most important that children become familiar with stories, storytelling, books, so that they don't turn up at school on day one not knowing what a book looks like. And whether it's a print book or an e-book, don't really care at the moment, but it's getting them reading at an early age. And I think I'm right in saying that the evidence suggests that the age of 4 is a critical age for getting across the ideas about stories and reading to children. And if you haven't got them at that early age, then those children are then playing catch-up when they go to school from day one at school. So let's see how we can build that collaboration, and I have some very enthusiastic staff who are working away to do what we can to support that. Whoops, what have I done? Ooh. It's back. So this is our centre in Auckland. And there is all sorts of good work going on in that space. This is part of the centre in Auckland. It's not the whole centre, but this is kitted out as part of the Tirohia Mai exhibition. And it's deliberately designed to be an inspiring space. We've talked quite a bit about inspirational library spaces from all over the world at this conference. And it's certainly our intention to support the development of inspirational modern library learning environments across New Zealand. It's important that school principals, school boards, the Ministry of Education all understand the value of having that kind of inspirational space in every school in the country. And of course, public libraries too need to be inspiring. And I suspect that there are one or two of you in the audience who may not feel that your library spaces are as inspiring as they could be. So that's an important piece of work for us, helping to develop that idea of the inspirational space. And just to show that we are up with the times, these are the first 2 products from our 3D printers. The first one was that kind of basic cube thing, not terribly flash. But look how rapidly we've evolved and progressed onto that wonderful spiral bowl object. So where will we be next year? Seriously, the point about this is that I want the National Library to be that kind of exemplar of a space where we know that it's not all about our collections. What we want the library to be is a space where people truly get the importance of using old knowledge and new ideas to create new value for New Zealand. And when we opened the National Library in Wellington last November, the Prime Minister encouraged all his colleagues to come over and have a look. And Minister Maurice Williamson came over to visit, and I met him at the front door and walked him into the foyer, and he started telling me about how the library really needed to get with it, and that it's not about books anymore. And I said, yes, Minister. And I couldn't agree with him more. And he said, there's these things called 3D printers. I said, yes, we're going to have one over there. And he said, oh, really? And he said, well, wouldn't it be good if you had TED Talk videos for people to be able to come in and see? And there's this fantastic TED Talk video about how you can use light bulbs for broadband connectivity. And I said, yes, it's on the AV pod just over there. And so we sat him down and he saw the TED Talk on this light bulb for connectivity, and he said, "You've made my day." So we are beginning to get that message across at a very senior level, that the business of the library is changing with the times. Which brings me to the minister, our minister, Chris Tremaine. One of the topics that he's particularly keen on is how public libraries can fulfill their role as community digital hubs. And some of this is because the government wants to make it easy for the citizen to do business with government. So, for example, you could perhaps go into your local library and renew your passport online, but not if you've not got good technology at home. And so we're exploring this idea about what it might mean for public libraries to take on the kind of official label of community digital hubs. And we know that in Australia, the approach there is that it might be the public library that's designated as community digital hub, but it might be a community centre, it might be a school that's designated as community digital hub. What I'm trying to ensure is that if we do go down this path, that it's something that every public library is enabled to fulfill, and that if the government sends out a message that you can go to your local library and expect to find a community digital hub facility there, whatever that looks like, that indeed your local public library, wherever you are in New Zealand, will indeed say, yes, we are a community digital hub. Now, many of you will see yourselves in that role already, but there are still many libraries that are not properly supported to do much more than perhaps basic free internet access through APNK, the Aotearoa People's Network Kaharoa. This is a bunch of services that we provide to support public libraries already. Some of these services are not just for public libraries. But over the next few weeks, I expect to be able to develop our capability to support public libraries further. And that's in response to very strong messages that we've had from the Association of Public Library Managers that the National Library needs to be better prepared to work in strategic partnership with public libraries across the country. Brand library is a topic of discussion at the conference this week, and it's a subject dear to my heart. What business are we in? And I'm very clear at the National Library that we have got a statement about the business that we're in with our Collect, Connect, Co-Create Knowledge to Power New Zealand. We are in the knowledge business. I suppose the question for all of you is whether or not you can convince, let's say, the skeptics that your library will be important in the future. And I know that there are people at this conference who have bosses, chief executives, who think that libraries are obsolescent. And I know that Lorinda deliberately, and I think rightly, steered away from that in the opening address. But I'm here to say that there is a very real threat to the long-term future particularly for public libraries, but I suspect in other places as well, that too many of our decision makers have got this view that libraries are indeed obsolescent. They think nice things about libraries now, they love us, but actually they see our product life cycle reaching an end. And it's not that they bear any malice necessarily, they just think that we are in a dying business. And in my job, I get to hear that comment quite a lot, not necessarily about the National Library, but about libraries in general. So there's the question for you, that's your challenge. Can you do that? That's what we do at the National Library of New Zealand, and every time I get the opportunity, I repeat this over and over again, because it's about knowledge that's important for New Zealand. That's the business that we're in. I do get slightly worried when I read fabulous stories on the internet or hear fabulous presentations at conferences about people lending fishing rods or sewing machines, not because that there's anything inherently wicked about doing that, but the news stories that go out around that activity send unhelpful messages about the business that we are in. We're not in the business of lending stuff. We're in the business of collecting, connecting, and co-creating knowledge that people can turn into value. And anything that we do that undermines the message that we are in the knowledge business and it is important, not trivial, not recreational only, anything we do to undermine that message about our brand is really unhelpful at such a critical time. The fork in the road that Nat was talking about. We are at a point in history where we need to pay attention to this stuff. We all have a responsibility to pay attention to this stuff. Some messages that I've picked up from the conference, reinforcing the point that we help build literacies from early years, and gaming can help to build digital literacy. I am seriously interested in the idea of having a Minecrafter in residence at the National Library. Well, seriously, it's an interesting idea. Wouldn't that be a great way to engage young people? And you can build libraries in this Minecraft space. And somebody was telling me, I think it was Sam Elworthy, who's the president of the Publishers Association, because he was talking about Minecraft being the enemy of publishing, and so, the enemy of reading. He was only joking, I think. But I think he illustrated that, I think it's Pizza Hut who built a Pizza Hut inside Minecraft. And you can actually go into the Pizza Hut and order a real pizza, and it is delivered to your door as you're sitting playing Minecraft. We could do that with libraries. Anyway, some knowledge sharing is best done face-to-face. Our kaumātua told us how important the kanohi ki te kanohi can be particularly for Māori, but I think not only for Māori. And it's an argument I'm making repeatedly about the work that we do in the Alexander Turnbull Library, where the taonga that we have in Wellington, yes, you can digitize it, but there will always be something very special and very different about that face-to-face engagement with the original object. Not for everything, but for many things that we have in our collections, that is still going to be important. And the expertise of our staff, the face-to-face discussions with experts will always be important. And it can be playful. And from Lorcan, the point which he made about doing things at the right scale, I think that is such an important message for us. Some of it should be at global scale. That's what I'm particularly interested in, the role of the National Library as the intermediary between local libraries, if you like, here in New Zealand. I know university libraries have got connections all around the world as well, and indeed Auckland public libraries will too. But I think that there is something that we need to think through about where we're best using global infrastructure and where we're best using some kind of national infrastructure. We're already doing it with, for example, the Aotearoa People's Network Kaharoa. That's deliberately been developed as a national scale of support. What else can we be doing at that national scale? And what can I do to more effectively lock into services that are available globally? So that, I think, I need to leave you with as your challenge. And some of you might think, well, what can I do about it? And the purpose of this is not to send you away depressed that the world's going to come to an end The point about this statement is that every single person in this room can actually contribute to changing the perception that decision makers have about the value of libraries. If you use your influence individually, you can help the brand library campaign that LIANZA is developing to become viral across the whole country. And I seriously encourage you all to think about the little conversations that you can have with people about the value of the service you provide now and into the future, particularly into the future. You can each help to sell that message. It's sometimes quite difficult when you've got a skeptical boss who's repeatedly telling you that the business that you're in is a dying business. But one of the things I'd encourage you to do, I heard it at a conference in Adelaide a few weeks ago. The speaker was talking about the importance of being brave just for 5 minutes longer. And the people who succeed are the people who are brave for 5 minutes longer. And that's perhaps a message that you could take away with you about just putting another 5 minutes of your time into helping to influence colleagues, decision makers particularly, that the brand library is a strong brand for the future. LIANZA's work around influencing decision makers is hugely important. I would encourage you to support that. I've got one word for you as my final message to take away with you as you go back to your different parts of the country, to encourage you to think about the influence that LIANZA can have in making it viral. Nō reira, tātou kua hui hui mai nei tēnei rā, tēnā koutou, pai marire.